Hello, this is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest agronomist, with your Agronomy in Action Focus Friday podcast here on the 25th of July. Now let's start with our heat unit accumulation update. We're going to talk about a unique phenomenon found in the thumb of Michigan this past week called green kink. Going to update you on tar spot and its progress, and also discuss our latest insect find, true armyworm. It's now been actually identified in some corn, as well as we're going to give you an update on the overall crop progress in northern Indiana and Ohio from a special guest. So let's begin as usual by talking about our current heat unit accumulation. Now, basing our heat unit counts on a planting date of May the 1st in the East Lansing area, we've now accumulated 1,372 heat units. Now, in comparison, we're down only 66 heat units from last year, but we're finally ahead by 1 heat unit versus the 5-year average. Now, going south to Coldwater, we're 77 heat units behind last year and just 12 behind the 5-year average. And finally, going north to the Mount Pleasant area, we're 85 heat units behind last year and 6 units behind the 5-year average. So, as a whole, we're really having a pretty normal year for heat unit accumulation so far. Now, as for my travels this past week, it's been a plethora of different issues. Plus I had a quick trip to Indianapolis for our Golden Harvest sales kickoff meeting. Now, first on the list of interesting issues for the week is a situation called green kink. Now, this is where you get fast-growing corn stalks that bend in half at a point between the leaf nodes, partway up the stalk. Now, this is actually caused by a lack of turgidity, or basically water pressure in the cells of the growing corn plant, and that allows the plant to kink over in the presence of oftentimes a wind event. Now, this is found in situations usually where plants, they're low in total available water, either due to a drought condition in the area or due to the corn plant having some reduced root mass due to maybe compaction or root feeding, all of which lower the ability of that fast-growing corn plant to pull up the total amount of water to keep that plant upright. Now, this can often be confused with root lodging or even green snap, but it's a completely different phenomenon. Now, if it were green snap, boy, that plant would have completely broken in half at the leaf node, and not within the internode. And, if it was root lodging, the plant would have blown over at the base of the plant and then probably goosenecked back up over time. So the good news is that these plants will most likely bend back upwards, similar to gooseneck corn, and should also develop an ear come harvest time, though there may be some yield loss or delay in maturity of these individual plants. Now, I also received some photos and some calls from 2 different Golden Harvest seed advisors about feeding damage to corn in areas north of Michigan. Now, and upon investigation, I did find the telltale signs of excessive leaf feeding on the edges of those corn leaves, which is kind of diagnostic of true armyworm feeding. Now, when bad enough, these insects will actually destroy all the leaf material, except for that center midrib of the corn leaves, leaving a spiky-looking plant. Now, according to MSU entomologist Dr. Chris DeFonso in her most recent update, quote, true armyworm, which are normally limited to infesting wheat in early June, has persisted into July. This is the second generation coming out of winter wheat, or the result of later movements from south to north, or a combination of both, end quote. Now, as for determining a spray economic threshold on this pest, I always consult the Purdue Corn and Soybean Field Guide for their recommendations. Now, according to their recommendations for true armyworm, quote, treatment may be necessary if greater than 50% of the plants show fresh feeding and larvae are less than 1.25 inches long, end quote. So you can find these larvae by unraveling the damaged leaves. They should still be there. You will also oftentimes see fresh frass, or basically bug poo, on the leaves in these areas. Now, if you're finding damage above that economic threshold we discussed earlier, it may be time to consider an insecticide spray on those fields. Now, as for scouting, start with fields that tended to be maybe weedy or had a cover crop earlier in the year, both of which may have attracted the adult armyworm moths for egg laying earlier in the season. Now, as long as I have your attention, I just wanted to give you a quick update on tar spot. Since last week, we've added in Michigan Kent, Saginaw, Tuscola, Calhoun, and a probable report in Shiawassee County. In Indiana, we've added Lake, Jasper, White, and Cass counties. And in Ohio, it's been reported as far north as Hardin County. Now, high heat is its enemy, but cool nights with heavy dews, that'll keep it brewing. So let's keep scouting those high pressure fields, especially, those with either a tar spot history or corn on corn, or definitely our irrigated fields out there. Now, finally, today, I'd like to introduce our Golden Harvest strategic farm partner, Mr. Andy Majors. He's going to give us an overall crop update in his area of northern Indiana and Ohio. Andy, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it, Charles. Hopefully everything is going well up in your area. And,
Absolutely.
this is one year that we do have a lot to talk about, I suppose. Um, is I kind of look at northern Indiana, I would say it's that much of the corn, planted is under maybe a more optimal condition overall. It just looks really good. However, that region has experienced drought stress this year. I think really the later planted crops are showing signs of heat and drought stress. Now, with that being said, the eastern part of the state experienced planting emergence issues due to persistent rainfalls. So you've had both ends of the spectrum in northern Indiana this year. The western portion really did, though, benefit from a little bit drier conditions and earlier planting. Overall conditions are variable, but about 55% of the corn is silking. For my last research, as of July 23rd to 24th, roughly 5 points behind is what I see the 5-year average. 94% of the corn has emerged and is rated 63% good to excellent. I would say this, though. The crop is becoming a little more sensitive to the continued heat and potential lack of timely rainfall, particularly in the areas that pollinated early. If I touch on soybeans, planting is at 95% complete, 90% emerged, and 2% blooming. Conditions overall are rated at 63% good to excellent. Really, what I do see is soybeans, probably in that north central Indiana, are taking a really positive turn. And with the onset of flowering and vigorous growth, although some early season moisture issues did cause a little temporary, yellowing, maybe in just parts of the field. If I move over to Ohio and touch on corn, corn development is progressing rapidly here in Ohio, 40% silking stage, 6% in the dough stage as of July 21st. Silking progress is slightly ahead of the 5-year average at 21% versus the 18% average year prior. Overall, corn condition is rated at 56% good, excellent as of July 14th. And however, planting was delayed here in Ohio. What we did see were extremely wet conditions early on. So we are a bit behind when it comes to both corn and soybean planting. Soybeans are developing quickly here in Ohio with 50% blooming and 14% setting pods. Soybean blooming is slightly behind its 5-year average at 34% versus a 38% average in the prior July. Overall, soybean conditions here in Ohio are rated at 53% good to excellent as of July 14th, 2025. With that being said, Charles, I would also have to touch on what I am seeing are prime conditions in both Ohio and Indiana for tar spot that has definitely been confirmed, as you talked about. I think it's something we need to keep an eye on, and fungicide applications are something to consider this year. I would be really checking your fields and looking heavy this year for either northern corn leaf blight or gray leaf spot as well.
Well, Andy, I really appreciate that update there and appreciate all the work you're doing as a strategic farm partner for us at Golden Harvest down in that area. So, folks, as we wrap up this week's Agronomy in Action Focus Friday podcast, let's get out there and walk those fields. Let's check for some armyworm feeding and for tar spot lesions. Don't forget about the spider mites we talked about last week. And boy, if you've got some of those dry soybean fields out there, let's be checking those for mite pressure as well. And remember that, boy, the earlier we catch these problems and take action to fix them, the better chance we have of getting the best performance out of our fields. This is Charles Scoble, your Golden Harvest agronomist, with your Agronomy in Action Focus Friday. Have a great week.